You're listening to the Two Act Podcast. I'm your host, Adi, and as always, I'm joined by my other co-host, Gothjon. How's it going? Welcome back.
Wadi Ka, Adi.
Sawadee Ka. Welcome back
right?
to you too. You're learning. You're putting in the minutes to learn Thai.
The Thai greeting.
I'm impressed. I didn't expect that. You caught me off guard there. But it's a good thing I knew a little bit of Thai since I visited recently. But welcome back. We're here finally to end this segment on our season that we've been doing on the White Lotus, which just concluded its third season finale with quite the episode. I mean, if you've been following us or listening to our previous episodes, we did the season premiere. We did a catch up on up till episode 6, and now everything's out. Story's concluded, season's over, and we're here just to get our final reactions and just see how we feel so far. Did the season live up to our expectations? Were we hyping it up too much? Were the surprises surprising? Did twists and turns occur that met and satisfied? So we're here to unpack everything. And I'm just going to go with your opening thoughts, John. What was your reaction?
So
how do you react
as a show in general? Honestly, I didn't think I was going to vibe very well with the show. I was pleasantly surprised. White Lotus has a lot of awful people being shitty to each other. And it's a tale of rich people and some of the things that they're got coming to them. I did expect some of them to go home in a body bag. I was just spoilers for White Lotus season 3.
Spoilers indeed. If you haven't seen it, what are you even doing here? Go
right.
Watch it.
Are you lost? Yeah. It was. I think I expected it like to be like that whole last episode to be like the whole thing, but it didn't really hit to the body being found till maybe like the last like 30-20 minutes of the episode.
Yep. It saved quite the explosions for the very final moments. And
I wanted the whole episode to just be that.
To be fair, I mean, this is like, so in all fairness, right? This is like the lowest season ever. The first season was only 6 episodes. It was considered a mini series. Second season had an episode more. This one has 8, and the final episode's 90 minutes. So he's got a lot of wiggle room. And generally, Mike White does finales really well. And I felt like with this one, he really saved all the crazy dramatic bits for the very end. But I'm glad that we got like I would say, whether it's satisfying or not we can debate, but I'm glad that every character we could sort of see where they're heading by the end of it. It wasn't like someone got blatantly cut off, or I mean there's some characters were a bit more redundant than the others, like Mook and some of the others from the supporting crew, but I guess they all served their purpose. And look, let's get down to the business here, because the White Lotus is always known for the death that occurs, right? Every season there's a death. That's the body that's been found in the very first episode, and turns out, as we predicted, there's more than one death. There's quite a few deaths.
And a couple of fake outs.
A couple of fake outs too. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, you had me there, Mike.
That fruit, you're like, oh, that's like Chekhov's gun. Don't be surprised.
Hey, I told you, Mike White loves red herrings. And when they spoke about that poisonous fruit, I was like,
that's gonna end up in something.
That's gonna come back for sure. And
it did.
It sure did, yeah. And I mean, where do you want to even start with this? Do you want to go from the deaths, or just from the beginning? How do you want to lead the conversation? What was the thing that really got to you?
That Rick did it.
That Rick did it.
Yeah, he did what he was going to do going there. He confronted the old man that supposedly killed his father, which Everyone and their mom called the old man was his father.
It was a really popular theory, which came true. But I liked how they played the trope. So usually it's always, like Star Wars, I am your father, or I'm your father.
Right,
Whatever
the line that's the worst attributed line in cinematic history, where everyone reminds that they remember the wrong line. Yeah, Mandela. And even I remember the wrong line, and I watched the movie like 20 years ago for the first time.
Exactly. I mean, the Mandela effect there, but I like how they played it because it's like he didn't really like this guy was such a miserable character himself.
Right.
Like, okay, Rick, my opinions on Rick changed a lot at the end of this episode, but I also thought like the old man, Jim Hollinger,
he's asking for it.
He's kind of asking for it, but how
he's
miserable
a fucking prick.
Exactly. The fact that he knew all this while that Rick was his son, and he still didn't tell him. All he had to do was just tell him and get it done with. But he chose to insult his mother and antagonize him further, and that kind of let Rick go down into a mental breakdown, which unfortunately results in him, crying out for help and then snapping and then killing Hollinger. But I just thought, like, wow, okay, what sort of drama is this? Like, this guy really is like playing on Rick's emotions here.
Fucking asshole. He thinks he's untouchable. He even brought a gun.
Yeah.
Little did he know that gun was going to be his foil.
Little did he know, but at the same time, I'm thinking like, Rick, you go all the way to Bangkok. You plan this, sort of crazy encounter where you manage to get into the hotel owner's home to get to Hollinger. You confront him, but you don't really do anything. You're just like, what? Push him off a chair.
Yeah.
And then you get away, and then what? You go on a bender, and then you fly back to the same hotel, owned by the same people. What do you expect's gonna happen? Like, bruh, that's like
in the heat of the moment, he's being real dumb.
He's been real dumb, but also, I feel for poor Chelsea. She gets caught up in this, but it's her choice. She was Rick till the end, and and I think ride or die. And I think she could have chosen to step away, but she was incapable. But it's kind of sad because you look at the scene that they have at breakfast where after he meets Hollinger, he tells Chelsea, "Oh, he's back."
And
Chelsea's that, like, forget about him. I'm here.
I generally wasn't like them as a couple. I wasn't like really ride or die until before that where the moon party where she didn't cheat. But then when I see them on the beach when they get together, I was just like, "Aww." They're meant to be together. They're so fucking mismatched, but they're meant to be together.
They're meant to be together for sure.
Genuinely cares about him, even though he's a stick in the mud.
I think the dynamic is so interesting because she's like she wants to fix him.
Right? Yeah, and that's she has a savior complex for sure.
Exactly. She's like really into broken men, and she's really trying to fix him. And maybe she, deep down, she knows that this is a flaw. This is not healthy, but that's what she's into, broken men. But unfortunately, he's incapable of love. It's not like he doesn't love her. I just think he's incapable of it because he's driven by unconsolable rage, which has consumed him. And I think it's such a great reminder of how, like, ideally, Rick, you kind of won in life. You had like a girlfriend who cares about you, who's not like with you for what you offer, like materialism or money or wealth. Like, she likes you for who you are, but he can't see past what childhood trauma he has, and that is ultimately his demise that leads to his end. I think it is kind of it's tragic, but I don't feel, I think there's sympathy, but I don't feel that much for him. In fact, ironically enough, the scene where they met up Chelsea and Rick, Chelsea has a conversation with Saxon, who's finally showing some rare, unexpected signs of growth by realizing, by reflecting, and it's almost like after his brother handed to him, he finally was able to shake off who he was and reflect on his actions and who he is as a person.
Yeah, he learned how to read.
He learned how to read, and the fact that she called him soulless, I think it really struck a nerve, and he really wanted to, he really wanted to be seen, and I feel like they had a connection. And for a brief moment, he actually saw Chelsea for who she was, and that kind of scared her a bit. There's the scene in the previous episode where they actually, you can see there's a moment of connection there, but she's scared. She doesn't want to commit to that because she's all Rick. But it's kind of sad, that scene, because you see the conversation they're having. She's obviously given him books to read, and he's actually read them. And then he sees Chelsea and Rick, embrace together, and you can see he's kind of sad about it. And of course, you can debate whether that's like whether he's falling for Chelsea or whether it's like here's a person who's actually seen him for who he is. So it's kind of like his look while Chelsea runs towards Rick. It kind of got me. It's like that feeling of finally being able to open up and try to be vulnerable because someone understood you and you want to build a connection from it, only to end up in the same place as you started. And, it was kind of like crushing moment for him. Although, look, there's no denying he's not the best character. But I quite like the acting Patrick Schwarzenegger.
Oh yeah, he definitely killed the show for sure.
He killed it. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, look, I ended up feeling more sympathy for Saxon than Rick. And when we started the season, we were all Rick. We were all pro Rick, and
I was pro Rick to the very end.
Exactly. We were anti Saxon. We were like, this guy's a creep. He's
still anti Saxon.
He's gross.
He's gross.
He's gross, but there's signs that he can potentially change now if he wants to. But that's up to him.
He'd be poor, so he better.
That's the bit we should get into next, because the Ratliff family, oh my god, that whole suicide thing was like driving me nuts.
I was
on the edge of my seat.
They're about to drink the Kool-Aid. He was making mimosas. He got those poison seeds from all those fruit right outside their hotel room. He's grabbing them all. He's like crushing them, putting them in a blender. And
I was like, damn, he's actually gonna do it.
He makes mimosas for everyone other than
pina coladas.
Pina coladas. That's what it was. Sorry, I don't drink alcohol. It's all the same shit to me. So he does all that, and you're thinking, oh my God, they're all going to suicide pact together, but they don't know that they're drinking their last drink. Yeah. And then Timothy, he like loses his shit at the last second. He's like, okay, all right, the milk's bad. And he starts like just throwing it all away. He breaks Saxon's cup like out of his hand.
Yeah, he does. But before that, I think it's important to note that he actually checks on everyone within the family just to test what would, because he can't stomach the courage to tell them what's going to happen to them, but he's indirectly checking like, oh, could you live in a different lifestyle where there's no wealth?
Lachlan was the only one that was like, yeah, I'd be fine.
Yeah, and it's ironic because we see some changes here, and Lachlan was the only guy who was like, yeah, I think I can live, and that's why he chooses to like spare Lachlan and be like, you're not drinking any of this. But I think it's kind of cowardly if he had to go through it, because it's like, you're gonna kill off your whole family and leave your youngest son alive to deal with all that trauma and all that shit that's waiting for him back home. And I just think like, wow, that's like an insanely cowardly thing to do. And it's even insanely cowardly just to fucking do the thing what he did, which is kill his whole family by making them drink a suicide cocktail. But I think it's interesting that he changes his heart right at that very moment where I just thought they were gone. I was like, oh shit, we're gonna see the whole family drop dead. and it's gonna be like almost like a bloodbath or vomit, and I was like, shit, this is gonna
be
happen.
a lot more than 2 people dying.
but before that, we do need to talk about Piper though, because remember when I said earlier in our previous episode, I think, where I said, there's characters who've been like altruistic and woke, and they've been really privileged, and they're acting in a very altruistic, virtuous way, but turns out they're not, because they're actually somewhat narcissistic. And it turns out Piper was all the way along. All it took was her to just spend the night at that monastery, and she's just like her mom, or she's just gonna be like her mom.
She made her mom so happy when they talked.
Oh,
so happy.
When she was crying about organic food and air conditioning, I was like, it's so over.
Yep,
it's so over. All that 6-7 episodes of her being like, I want to spiritually connect. Yep, it was all a facade. It all, it all slipped through. The mask is off, and her true intentions came out, and it's, it's reflected on how she dresses after that moment, because after that she's all glammed up again, and before that she was just dressed in a really simple, really muted tone, and after that it was dramatically changed. And I think that's what kind of crushes Tim even more, when he sees that, oh shit, like the child that I thought who was like more altruistic and more open to like living a simple life, turns out she's not. that's what kind of, I think that was like the final nail for him, to be like, yep, this is not gonna work, and there's no way I can tell them, so might as well just off ourselves here, because the wife's surely not gonna be able to stomach this. But it's crazy how it didn't go through. I like the fact that it didn't go through, because I think that would be kind of cop out to see Mike White just kill off the Ratliffs because Tim couldn't. I mean,
well, now they're gonna get their spinoff show, Living in Poverty with the Ratliffs.
That would be.
Hear about that yet?
I did. There's a lot of fans calling for a spinoff. I would love to see a spinoff on them. I think I'd love to see Victoria working somewhere, being forced to work.
Oh yeah, like a burger joint. Oh my god, that'd be great. She could be
these bananas are only $10. Surely we could afford it.
Yeah, you saw that too.
When she said there's bottles of wine behind you, Tim, like I lost my shit. Like that was so funny. That whole scene was so, like, she's been killing it. Her accent, and she's been
Posey.
Parker Posey's been kind of like drugged the whole, well, not drugged because Tim actually is the one who got drugged, but she's been so out of it the whole season. But it's so funny. Like I always found her scenes so hilarious, and I think she was like great comedic relief. And I was actually worried that I'd hate the character. Like I couldn't stand them when we first saw the first episode. But I was actually
I hated her to the bitter end.
No, she's still despicable, but she's funny.
Yeah,
she's funny and very goofy. All her interactions are really goofy. But Saxon dying, did you actually? I'm sure. Not Saxon. Sorry, Lachlan dying. Did you actually believe?
I did for a second, just because
same.
How they
totally got me.
I was like, well, that's pretty unfortunate. And then his like dad like rushes over to him, and I was like, of all the characters to die by the fruit, that's not what I expected. But it did make sense how he didn't clean out the mixing contraption, because as a guy,
he wanted some of Saxon's leftover protein.
Yeah. Okay, that was a little too on the head. Ooh, no,
protein powder.
Yeah, protein powder. There you go. The whey. That shit makes you fart a lot. It's awful. So he didn't clean it out, which is why he had that issue. But that's pretty believable, because if I was a teenager, I would do the same thing. There's all the gross shit that we would do.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I want to pick on, because a lot of people have been complaining about, oh, like who doesn't clean their blender before making a juice or a smoothie or whatever. But my thing was like, that's completely believable. Like as a teenager, yeah, he'd do it. And his reasoning was, oh, he thought like his brother made a protein shake, which is just leftover, and he might as well just add to it. It's no harm in thinking that. My concern was how dumb is Tim that he took away the glasses, but he ignored the blender.
You didn't
like
clean it?
He didn't clean it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, obviously that's, lethal, and it's going to there's a risk there, but he's so blinded by it. I don't know if it's because of the lorazepams he's been gulping, but it's like, you're like, bro, like, it's pretty obvious here what's going to happen, right? I mean, you're just flirting with danger by doing that. And he's very fortunate that his son survives. And I think the fact that he vomits a bit before kind of saves him, because I think he was gone.
Right.
And he was on the pool, and I was like, wait a second,
he body was drown.
The drowning's believable, but I was like, but the body was found on a pond. And then I was like, okay, well, this is gonna be like a separate death, which is like, it's not gonna be the death that we see in the first episode. But yeah, it was a surprisingly out of body experience for Lachlan.
That he saw God.
That he thought he saw God, and maybe his perspective on life and everything is. What did you think of the whole scene where he tells Saxon, "Oh, I'm a pleaser, family"?
Yeah, that grossed me out. I was already pretty grossed out. That full moon party, like that super, that recollection, like obviously, because it doesn't matter what kind of drugs I would do. I'd never do that with my brother. Kelsey was right. I thought it was funny because that's just the only response I would have for that. Because what else can you do other than laugh at that? Because of how like obnoxious and stupid and absurd just the words coming out of your mouth. It's just like, oh my God, Lachlan, you're so dumb. And then his brother's just like, could you just like never bring that up again?
It's like, you can worship me, but don't worship me.
Yeah.
And he's like, make your own drink. No one's going to make you a man. And that's like the first thing. That's like the first obvious sign that he's changed, because before he's like, I'm going to make you a man. I'm going to get you laid.
Right.
But
he's going to be the wingman.
But after being on the receiving end, he's completely changed him. You can see, like, look, Saxon, as much as he's another character that we all hate, and deservedly so, because he's a dick for majority of the season. But you can't deny that that's what's somewhat interesting about the show, is that it's taking really unlikable, flawed characters, but there's like signs of growth, there's signs of change, but not everything's resolved. You don't see a full change, because that's not realistic, right? I mean, it's not like life to see that. You don't just change overnight. Obviously, it may take time, but it's nice to see that he's a character who's capable of it. And maybe I think it was very poignant that the last shot is like, he still got the book that Chelsea gave him, and he probably, I don't know if he knows whether or not Chelsea's dead. I think that would have been stronger if he had to get a reaction of them finding out.
Yeah.
I think that was one of my complaints of the way it ended, is like, we don't really get much of a reaction from the shootout and everything that happens. The guests just leave, but at least you see that he's taking a piece of her with him, and he's still he's like, when his sister asks him, "Oh, what are you reading?" and he's like, you can see that hesitation,
and then he hits her over the head with the book.
It's like you can see the hesitation where he's like so sensitive. He wants to like be like, yeah, I'm reading this book about enlightenment, whatever, but then he just reverts to his jock personality, and he just bops her with the head with the book.
That's kind of like a brother thing.
It is a brother thing. Yeah. Maybe he's being the older brother in that situation. But I'm really impressed by the acting. I haven't watched a lot of Patrick Schwarzenegger's work, so a lot of people call him a nepo baby because he's obviously his dad's icon,
right?
Action star in the 80s or whatever. But like,
his dad's got to get back to the chopper.
and he had to get to the pussy at the start of the scene.
Get to the pussy, Mr. President.
But I'm glad. I'm really impressed by the performance and the range he showed.
And I can't wait to hear the Schwarzenegger family's review of White Lotus after they see what Saxon did in the show.
I'm sure it'll be a handful.
Ooh.
But what did you think of the choice of Tim not really saying what is going to happen to them, and the fact that they don't see the reaction of them finding the news?
They're going to know the second they, start looking online. I'm sure there's 4 billion articles about it by now. I think he just comes to terms. He just like, you're going to know. And he said his piece.
Surely at that moment where he saw his son being dead momentarily, I think he realized in that moment that whatever is going to happen surely can't be worse than seeing your own son die, like seeing your own child die in front of your arms. And I think the fact that that is the growth that he shows, and that's like, you know what, like I need to face my repercussions as a man and deal with what I've basically created was nice. I like the fact that he wasn't a coward who chose to cop out. And of course, we don't know exactly what happens. We don't see the reaction, but I'm glad it was withheld, because I think it's more about being in that moment and seeing him finally being able to come to terms with it, I guess, because we said earlier it's like the 7 stages of grief basically, of him being broke. But
Lazarpam stupor.
Lorazepam sales are, I'm sure, through the roof. The marketing in this for that is incredible. They must be making a lot. What else? What do you think of the shootout and the whole guy talk thing? Because he's another character.
I was surprised that he shot the gun.
Same.
Yeah.
When he couldn't stomach to basically get the Russians caught. Right. I was like, yeah, there's no way this guy's gonna do anything violent if he can't do that. I mean, he's living by this super moral Buddhist code.
Yeah, he's having too much humanity for criminals.
He is.
Your entire job is to stop criminals.
Yep. and I think that's where Mook is like kind of a catalyst to tell him, like, look, you have to, if you want to progress in life, sometimes you got to do it. You got to defend yourself, and you have to violence in self-defense is different than. And I mean, it's interesting because there's a lot of like Thai cultural ideology, of Buddhist ideology of no violence and everything. In fact, I think what was interesting was like the episode starts off with the monk, the head monk in the monastery saying,
I finally remembered what that monk guy reminded me of, depictions of the Dalai Lama.
yeah. Yep. I can see that. But I really liked how the episode starts with the monk saying that there is no resolution in life, and there's quick fixes, but those are temporary. And I think it really perfectly set the tone and set everything up for this last episode, because there's no real resolution. The only resolution that was like final was Rick and Chelsea dying, but they're going to be together in the afterlife or in the next life, as Chelsea hints. But the theory where she said bad luck comes in threes, it kind of came true here. We predicted deaths, and we're going to talk about the guy who keeps winning, and that's Greg.
What do you mean, Gary?
Gregory, pick your poison. Yeah. But the guy got away. He keeps winning. He keeps outlasting everyone. Turns out he's got a cuckold fantasy.
Yeah. Rich people are weird.
Rich
like Armie Hammer has crazy fantasies too, so it's only expected. He only had to give her $5 million, and she fucked off.
Pretty much. Turns out everyone has a price, and Belinda, represented by her son Zion, who comes in the last two episodes.
And Belinda even did what apparently what the blonde chick that died, she
Tanya,
did. Yeah, she did what Tanya did to her to porn chat.
Yeah, I was actually gonna bring that up because it's like it came in full circle, ironically, because that's exactly what Tanya
I thought we were
does.
gonna open a business together, and he's like,
that's exactly what Tanya does to Belinda in the first season, where she's like, oh, like I found someone and circumstances have changed, and it's word for word, it's exactly the same thing that she tells Porn Shy, who's Do you feel for the guy?
A little bit. I didn't get to know him that well, so
no, he wasn't. He wasn't a main.
No, he was. Just a lay.
yeah. But what did you think of Belinda? Going for the money. Did you see that coming? Were you surprised by her change?
I wasn't surprised, only because that's what I would do. He's gonna get away with it, whether or not. Either you live with your life and $5 million in your bank account, or you die with no money.
I think it's absolutely incredible how her son managed to counter the 100,000, which is like a drop in the ocean,
right?
And managed to get something of a puddle with 5 million,
right?
Considering Greg's worth like $500 million or something.
Right.
So I thought that was really. I was expecting like, oh shit, Greg's gonna be involved in this. Like, we're gonna see something. Maybe he's gonna like kill her, or some shit's gonna happen.
I'm surprised that Greg didn't initially offer a higher amount.
Yeah, he lowballed her.
Yeah, he lowballed her by a lot. Well, when you start thinking about like numbers that big, so like once you get past like 100 grand, is it necessarily a life-changing amount of money? Probably not. Like, what do you do? Put it towards your house or a couple of cars? $5 million, on the other hand, if you're not an idiot with it, that's a life-changing amount of money.
It is, especially if you decide to live in Thailand for the rest of your life. That's like billionaire type money. So it's like, I think. Look, it's a lot of people were like, "Oh, she's a sellout," but realistically, anyone in that situation would, right? Come on. I mean, Belinda, I'll be honest, she's not been my favorite character this season to watch, just because I feel like
no.
Exactly. That goes down to the acting, unfortunately. But I think she did do, it's like a Godfather moment. Like, she becomes the godmother.
Yeah, I guess so. She now becomes a part of the problem, not the solution.
It's like being rich for 5 minutes can change you completely. And it's fascinating to see, because this show, a lot of people mistake the show for being a murder mystery. It's not a murder mystery by any means. It's more a character study with perhaps murder and death involved. And I think that's what's always been so captivating about the show, is like, you want to see what depths of humanity or lack of humanity these characters have, and they're rich quite often, and you don't know if they're on what spectrum do they fall under. Are they the virtuous, altruistic, or are they completely self-indulgent? And you get to see an array of characters, and I think that's what makes this show so fascinating. And I think there was a lot of this episode had a lot of gloom and doom by the end of it. But the one thing that surprisingly resolved was the friendship between the three friends.
That was kind of wild. I didn't expect
it was
that.
wild. I didn't expect that either.
But
I mean, I did
guess
say
when you're that rich, it'll sort itself out.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I was like, wow, that monologue was something that Laurie gave at the dinner, and I think her acknowledging that the only thing that changes use time. I thought it rang true. It came from the heart. And I feel like it's like, look, you will have people in your life who are flawed or toxic or you don't get along with. But if you're friends with them and you've got a long-standing relationship with them, you kind of have a bond, whether you like it or not. And I think the fact that she's like acknowledging and accepting what it is, and the whole Russian story with her hooking up with that Russian dude who wanted
Alexei.
her money. Do you have Cash App?
Hey, do you got Cash App or Venmo? That was pretty funny. And then his girlfriend comes in and she's having to climb out the window and failing miserably while she gets yelled at by a chicken Russian.
Yeah. Because the previous episode, the tension was through the roof between the three friends. I mean, it was all out.
Right.
They were like,
thought there was gonna be a shootout with the Russians.
Yeah, that's what we all thought, right? We all thought of everyone on the internet.
Russian war.
We're like, oh, Guy Talk is gonna pick up a Russian fight shootout with Russians, and it's gonna be a crazy crossfire where the guests are gonna die. But turns out it was Rick, but the bodyguards were on 24/7 smoke break. They were horrible. These guys are the most incompetent bodyguards I've ever seen. And Rick was just John Rick. He just turned into John Rick.
Yeah. Just executing bodyguards left and right.
Yeah. But before that, he does go to the Indian lady. John Rick, yeah. But he does go to the Indian lady pleading for help. And this I thought was really, I wanted to get your opinion here because that's kind of could have been a pivotal moment where perhaps
she could have saved everyone's life.
Yeah. But, knowing, this is the thing, what I don't understand is it's one thing if you're on the street and some random stranger comes to you and looks like he's having a mental breakdown and you're in two thoughts about it, whether to help him or not. And you're like, yeah, he's probably a weirdo or a crackhead, or he's probably doing something shady. Let's ignore him. That's justified. But knowing that you knew he was your client and you knew his whole problem and still decided to ignore him or just push him away, basically, I was like, wow, that's so unlike a therapist, right? Who's meant to be.
She indirectly killed him.
She kind of did, because
he was on the ledge and she was just brushed him off.
And his demons, his demons won, unfortunately, because it's when he sees Hollinger with those actresses, with the actress and the friends by the pond, he just goes batshit insane. He just loses it completely, and he's just grabs his gun and shoots him. I thought the reaction of the hotel manager falling in the pond was really funny, though.
Till the bitter end, he's actually useless.
He's actually, and this is where I want to say that unlike the previous two seasons, this season didn't really focus on much on the manager at all. But usually, the manager is always an interesting character who's got somewhat of a story of their own. But this season he didn't. But I thought I didn't mind it. I think there's so much to juggle that you can't always. You got 40 million.
Yeah,
exactly. You got 40 million characters to go through in an episode. I mean, you look at it and you're like, oh, this is 1 hour of television. Yeah, but it's 1 hour of television where you got 10 minutes with this group of characters, 10 minutes with that group of characters, and you're trying to go through everything and come full circle with every sub character group's arc within an 8-hour period. So it's kind of it is hard. I mean, it takes a lot of planning and writing and organization to get that done, especially when you're doing it in an ensemble cast of actors who are, this A-listed. So I have quite a lot of appreciation for that. I think it's not easy to make a show like this where you have to do, they spent 7 months filming in Thailand, which is insane. So, I can only imagine they were cooped up in that hotel.
No AC.
I think Jason Isaacs described the experience as partly being in paradise, partly being Lord of the Flies, kind of being in a gilded cage. And I can only imagine, I mean, in that blazing heat, it's not easy. It's hard. So, I'm sure they went through a trial of fire. But I really like the way the last episode kind of took that extra time to really set things up, and it got through. I think we won't be surprised if Greg returns. The guy is just like,
yeah. If he didn't return, I'd be upset. That's you can't just do that and he's just not there.
Because he just winks at the end, and his girlfriend, it turns out, is like just a shallow companion, I guess.
Oh yeah, well, like, she's just trying to hook up with guys, and she's like, hey, he wants to get cooked,
pretty much. And
even Saxon's like, sorry, I couldn't do that for you. And she's like, we'll find another. No big deal.
And the fact that she said that so nonchalantly, kind of, I think it's a big moment for Saxon, because it's like, oh shit, that's how little you think of me, anyways. I mean, it's like, I think that's the way it really strikes him that they kind of looked at him as a douche who just wanted to get off, and turns out he's actually willing to show signs of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So, was there anything? What was your criticism? I'm curious to know. Like, what did you not like? What did you
of the episode, or just the show in general?
Well, we're kind of getting into the whole show in general now.
Okay, the whole show in general,
but also the episode, if you want.
Okay, the episode, like I was saying earlier, like I think the episode is just too long. I wanted that.
It is the longest.
I wanted that firefight at the beginning. I wanted to see that sooner in the episode. I really feel like you have this like build up, and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. Like, I was starting to get bored. That was the problem. I was just like, God damn it, wrap this shit up. I'm like, if I'm looking at a watch I don't have, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was mainly my issue just with this episode. I don't have a problem with my favorite characters being two star-crossed lovers that die. That's fine. Somebody's got to die. It is what it is.
But they're still your favorite character.
Yep. Rick's still my favorite character.
Rick's still your favorite character. I think it is like, it's a tragic ending for sure, because it's like, I don't know. Do you think he could have ever, had he survived, do you think he could have ever changed? It leaves me wondering, because I know some people, they're incapable.
Well, if Saxon can change, I think he could.
Absolutely.
He just got
Saxon is proof, right? The fact that he was the most
fuckboy of all fuckboy. Yeah. He's capital D douche.
Most despicable, toxic, a macho bro into himself so much.
Walks around naked around his brother. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, like talks about fucking, all sorts of wrong shit. And he ends up being a guy who shows real reflection and not progress, but maybe signs of growth, willingness to change, which is important, because that's the first step. And then you've got Rick, unfortunately, who I really, really wanted him to make it. I didn't want to see him die, but I think by the end of it, you just can't justify it anymore. You're like, you know what? You kind of you dug your own grave.
Right.
What do you think of that whole thing with the Bangkok stuff with Rockwell? And I think Rockwell's character was really good. I really enjoyed.
I thought it was fun.
It was fun. It was fun. And I won't be surprised if he returns in a future season as a guest.
I did like his friend's role when he was trying to get him to come back to the room, and all the girls are coming, and he runs up to him in his underwear, and then he does like a little somersault. Yeah, that was adorable.
That was funny. That's just Sam Rockwell being Sam Rockwell. The guy is a G. Definitely stole the show. I think he added like just the right amount of like goofiness that the show needed at that end.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And as a surprise guest too. And the whole thing where he was like pretending to be a director, and he's completely shitting it.
I like, oh my God, couldn't you guys like look up Wikipedia of our movies? Holy shit. It's right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was that bit really was so funny. But I always had a problem believing like why would you return to the same hotel? Why would you leave your girlfriend there? I mean, surely if you did something crazy like that, you'd want to like tell her and be like, get out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but that's just who Rick is. He's just attracted to danger. He just chooses it. You know, that's just how his character rolls. And
Fuck it is his mentality.
kind of is. I mean, he's on a bender with like
Yeah.
his friend in Bangkok with all these escorts and strippers and shit. And you could just see that's the first time he smiles legitimately in the whole episode, in the whole season.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah, he got the monkey off the back, but it just took the same guy returning to undo all of that, which is kind of ironic. But over the season, where you like, we can agree that some characters were not as strong.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think Mook was strong.
No, she wasn't. Which is kind of a bummer because like a lot of people expected her to have some sort of a role.
Well,
it turns out
she's not an actress.
True. I mean, we got to remember that she's actually
and also Zion. Like whatever.
Zion, I had more problems with for sure. I think like so the thing with Mook is like okay, you know, it's a big show. It's got a lot of characters. Not everyone can have their own arc.
Right.
Some are there to serve a purpose to sort of service another character's arc, and that's exactly what she does to Guy Talk. She's there to like make him get out of that mentality of being a cultural good boy and just like you gotta make tough decisions if you want to move up the ladder in life, and that's what she's trying to like. She is like the prize that he wants, and in order to get that, he must do what is against his moral code, which he does.
Pretty good prize.
But Zion, I thought the actor really overacted too much. I found it quite insufferable, actually.
Yeah,
and it's also really weird how like he comes across the dead bodies, and then the next scene he's on the boat and he's smiling and he's like, "Yeah, we're going rich," and it ends with them like jetting off, and they're like having a good time. Because they're rich now, Belinda is. But yeah, I thought he was a weak addition. I didn't think. I mean, I get what he had to do.
He supplies. He's literally a walking plot device.
Yeah,
that services the plot.
Pretty much. Yeah. Was there a highlight for you the whole season? Was there anything that stood out for you?
Oh fuck! The fucking moon party.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the best episodes of the show.
Yeah, no, that was wild. I didn't expect. See, you told me that's when it gets good.
Yeah,
that was definitely the highlight for the season for me. I watched it and my jaw dropped. Blinking in disbelief. Like, there's no way this is a fucking dream. It's got to be, because this is so like just unbelievable.
It's insane.
Yeah. No, it is. It is definitely. It's just unthinkable.
Yeah. It is, and I think a lot of people, when they start watching the show, they kind of forget that there's a death that occurs in the start of it, because the show gets so interesting and gets so into its own self with all the twists and turns and stuff that happens off the death stuff. That itself is the best part. The death is just there for the ending, because you gotta wrap it up and tie a bow, and this is what it's all about, which works great as a concept for the show. But I love the fact that the creator of the show has managed to take this gimmick of a death in the hotel or whatever, but make it more than that. There's more layers. There's more to indulge in, whether you like it or not. Some of it is ugly. Some of it is juicy. Some of it is not your vibe. But it's there, and it's a fascinating character study, fascinating exploration of like different types of people who are rich, and Greg, I would never have seen him over the course of whatever the 3 seasons the show has reached this stage. The guy keeps winning. He's unkillable. I'm convinced he's never gonna die. I do think it might be a bit too repetitive to bring him back, but they did say they might have an all-star season where they get like guests from each season, which would be funny.
The worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst, the best of the worst. But I think it will be funny because, yeah, I like the fact that the show's had this thing where there's always been a recurring character from the previous season or from the season before. So we never know. Maybe, Belinda could be the next Tanya, or maybe it could be some new, maybe Frank. Like I said, Frank could return as a guest. I could see that happening in a future season. That would be interesting. But let's get to final thoughts.
Okay. Right before that, let's do a fire round of what predictions we got wrong.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
We made a big deal about.
So I did go through all the text. I did.
Oh no! Really?
I control find it through our last 2 episodes that were of this podcast.
I'm impressed.
So predictions. So fruit was red herring. We predicted, maybe it might come in play. Lachlan was extremely lucky. He diluted the seeds enough through no fault of his own. It was really Timothy's fault that he almost died. So prediction: somebody die by the fruit. We were wrong.
We were kind of right though, because he was
almost dead. Right. Almost right.
He was technically dead for a few minutes.
Another theory that we both had was that there'd be like a tie element in the shootout.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we were not right. And for myself, I was dead wrong. The 3 bitches get to live on. Kate did not die. I said that
really
in our
wanted
first
to see
preliminary. I fucking hate those women. They're gross.
The way they jet it off when the shootout happens is so funny.
So this technically wasn't on the pod because you came to me later after we covered that one. You said Rick is going to die.
Yep.
You had your thought right before the final episode.
I did.
Watched that preliminary one.
Really
and then,
hard.
yeah. And I hate that you're right, but I thought it was kind of funny. And then you thought Greg was going to get his comeuppance.
Yep, he doesn't. He doesn't.
Yep.
Turns out
Greg is fine.
Turns out he keeps winning. He's the real MVP. He's the final boss who keeps getting away, and I think he's such a. I can't figure him out, man. All I know is he's a psychopath, and he's got weird fantasies, and he's probably I don't know what's his obsession being near White Lotus Hotel. Maybe we'll find out in the next season. But I think it might just turn in. It might just turn into TV's best running gag. This guy who keeps returning to the White Lotus in some way, in some form,
can't get enough,
but never dies. But is always around.
He'll be the manager of the next White Lotus.
Ooh, maybe he'll own. Yeah. No. Maybe he can own one in the future because at this point he practically lives in one, right? So he could straight up buy a property and be the owner, and that could have its own season. So that's not. Was there any other prediction? I think I did say nothing bad would happen to the Ratliffs. I did say that, and I am right that nothing bad happens at the property. What happens outside is obviously we know,
right?
But at least I was because.
Well, nothing bad happens, Lachlan.
I did say Saxon
did what he did to his brother.
I did say Saxon. Nothing bad's gonna happen to him because
Timothy got addicted to Lazarpam. I think some bad things happened. They just weren't death.
They weren't. They weren't fatal enough. Well, one was nearly, but they weren't fatal enough. There were bad things for sure. There were things no one would want to go through, but. It's somewhat true. Predict half, 50-50. I'll give it.
Okay.
Did I predict? No, I don't. I can't remember any other predictions. But I'm glad.
I think that last one. I think that was the last one because I didn't type that one up, so it had to be.
Yeah, I did. I think the Rick thing was just a thought I had the night before when I messaged you personally. But it just seemed increasingly likely that It just wasn't realistic for him to return and expect to not face some sort of...
Oh, and the Chelsea in threes. Yep, that's another prediction.
Yep. She was right.
Well, she made the prediction.
She did. She actually had really good advice for everyone, and I think that's just her character. She's just really good at helping people. Unfortunately, she couldn't help herself, or she chose not to. So that's how her fate is tied. I think it's a bold choice to kill the most hopeful character in the show. So I'll give credit for that. That does take a lot of guts to kill off a character everyone likes and is so morally...
You gotta kill your darlings.
You gotta kill your darlings, exactly. So yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad we did this season on the show. It's not something we normally do. I just thought it would be fascinating to check in and out and see how things evolve, just because I thought this is a show that has potential to really subvert your expectations in a good way or in a bad way. But yeah, it's been fun covering this. You have a rating?
Final thoughts?
Yeah.
Yep, rating. I'm going to keep it short. Show takes a lot to get into. First episode is just an introduction. Didn't immediately catch my attention. It was not until episode 4 where I actually wanted to finish the show. Strictly, I'll just give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's above average TV.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the show definitely took its time to get into the groove. And I think unlike previous seasons, it's a bit longer too. So it had maybe a lot more to do with playing it out with its pacing. But you know what? I quite enjoyed it. I think you're right. Some things are repetitive, some things dragged. But I definitely enjoyed the show from the midpoint onwards more, because that's when we finally really got into the crux of the drama. The resolution was definitely the most explosive any White Lotus season's ever had. It's never been like that. So again, it's quite a bold choice. I love the location of Thailand and the symbolism behind the themes of spirituality and, the whole thing with the monastery and connecting and detoxing and all that. And it's interesting to see this showcased. So yeah, in the end, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I think it was a strong season, still better than a lot of TV that comes out usually. And yeah, I mean, I still think season 2 is the best personally. That's like a 10 out of 10 season. But
so if I were to watch another season, that's the one you'd recommend?
Absolutely, yeah. That is
okay.
I would say, because it's an episode shorter. Maybe that's why it works in its favor, because it doesn't drag anywhere. It's just so good. The cast is fantastic. But also it's kind of like, you're rewarded when you've seen season 1, and it's the same with season 3. You're rewarded if you've seen season 2, because the context that carries over is always there. And I think that's why I was interested to get you to watch this. And I was interested to get your opinion on just season 3, because I know you never watched the previous seasons. But yeah, overall it's been fun. I don't know if we'll ever do something like this again, but
we'll see.
We'll see if something else comes along. But it's been absolutely fun nitpicking and, theorizing and making predictions and kind of getting into the whole world of the White Lotus. And I guess that wraps it up.
All right. We're going to roll into a recommendation. All right. So I'm going to recommend Death Parade. It's an anime from, I believe, 2012, 2013. I don't quite remember. But it is an anime that I always recommend to anime fans that are looking for something new to watch. So I have a little cute synopsis written. It doesn't spoil anything or anything cool. So 2 people die at the same time. So they have to play a high-stakes game for their afterlife. One is sent to hell and the other to heaven. And if you don't want to be spoiled for Death Parade, watch before we review it. We usually try to get these out every 2 weeks.
Awesome. We'll be tuning in for that. That's goodbye from me.
All right. See you, Space Cowboy.